Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to Toe Tags Metal Reviews, and today we're giving you guys our first impressions of the new releases from the Browning, Disparaged, Klone, and Make Them Suffer. So, 4 albums released today, and let's just kick it off with Omni by the Browning. This is a band that we've covered a few times on the channel before, including a review. Their last record, End of Existence, we did cover in 2021 when it came out. We both gave it 6s. Good album. Looking back, I mean, it's been a while since I've listened to that, or even just to this band outside of reactions.
Yeah.
I want to say I liked Geist a little more, which was their 2018 album. But still, I mean, 6, good record. So this one, we've actually reacted to a few of the tracks from this one, like from music videos. This year, we checked out Deceiver and Soul Drift. And I remember when we checked out Soul Drift, which was the most recent one, we were both thinking like, okay, it's pretty heavy on the electronic stuff now. Like they've really leaned into that.
Basically rave music at certain parts.
At that point, but then, and you know, this is why we say context matters. That's the closer. It makes sense for it to be like that, because the rest of the album isn't as much like it.
Not as much.
Yeah, there's a lot of heavy electronic influence on this album and with this band at this point, but I feel like Soul Drift was a bit more, and it makes sense because not only is it the closer, it has that interlude that leads into it. Like clearly it's set up to be that way. So you listen to that as a single and as a music video, you think, okay, this is where this band's going now.
Yeah.
But then without the context of this is the end of the album, this is how it got here. Oh, now it makes more sense. Yeah. And that's the issue of dropping a song like that as a single, is because if you don't have that album context, you're gonna be confused and you're gonna think this is just what the band is now. Oh, maybe it's not. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's one of the difficulties of trying to choose singles to make videos for, because you don't want your audience to misunderstand what the album's gonna be about. You want them to get excited for the album and think like, okay, this is what we're in for, with maybe some surprises in there. But if you drop a bunch of songs that are like, whoa, okay, what are they? Like, I don't get it.
So do you think the band is, because they've been leaning heavier into the EDM stuff as the albums have progressed, I feel, right? Do you feel like by dropping that song at the end of the album, they're kind of trying to tell fans like, hey, we're gonna lean into this even more. Like we're leaving on a note like this because the next album's gonna pick up right from there.
That'd be an interesting way to do that.
It would be.
I kind of like that.
But the way you're phrasing it makes me feel like maybe that was the plan.
To be fair, I'm not like even complaining about it. Like, I think it sounds cool. I don't think there are many bands that sound like this. Like, you have this band's leading into it. Brand of Sacrifice has been going down that kind of path.
Not nearly as much.
Not as much, but they've had some of that in their music.
Electronic kind of stuff.
And they've been doing more of it as time goes. And, you know, I mean, there's also full bands that like totally just are this sound, like The Algorithm, which is sick, by the way. If you guys haven't listened to that, go check out The Algorithm. It's like this, but like even crazier. So, you know, there were a few songs of note that I thought were pretty cool. The electronic breakdown part near the end of Hive Mind, I kind of like that. And then the transition from that into Fed Up, I thought was nice. The transitions felt pretty smooth. It wasn't like, whoa, this song and that's like, it just felt like very smooth transitions between songs, and it's like, wow, okay, this picks up nicely where the last song leaves off. You know, and I thought that was pretty cool. So, and based on Soul Drift, it gave me the expectation that this album was going to be very mainly electronic more than the band.
Yeah.
That wasn't exactly the case, though there was a lot of electronic stuff in there, but it felt like, okay, the band is still like the main force of this band, of course. The title track was a pretty cool mid-album break for the melodic stuff that it has. It's got a female vocal in there, which is a nice mix-up. On top of that, melodic pre-chorus and hook. I just kind of felt that in the second half, though, it got a little juicier. Maybe that was this was the first album I started with today, so maybe it was my mind waking up.
Maybe.
You know, I don't know what it was, or just warming up, or who knows, but in the second half from Deceiver onward, I started liking it more. And I also did not expect this album to be as short. Like, it's 26 minutes.
Yeah.
Did not feel like it.
Yeah, it's almost 27 minutes, but either way, it's still on the shorter side. But yeah, I feel like this band, they got a unique sound, right? There's not many, like TV Fish says, not many bands out there that sound like this, and if there are, they don't sound as much like this. Like, they're really infusing the two genres, and I don't know, it almost feels like it's 50-50, to be honest, to me. It probably isn't, but my biggest thing is, like, I feel like this is a fun band. I feel like there's a lot of punch there. There's good energy, and it's just really a mood thing for me. It really is, because I liked a lot of EDM type of music back in my day, so I'm no stranger to it. And when I hear it in metal, it's not an unwelcoming thing. I'm fine with it, but I gotta be in the right mood for it. My headspace has to be in the right spot. Maybe it was just today, or maybe it's just I'm not into it as much anymore, but this album wasn't doing much for me. And I think the best standalone track for me was Poison, which I believe is a single we reacted to as well.
We may have, but I don't think it was this year. Like, I think it was
one of the first singles they released, I think, yeah.
Yep.
I think this song as a standalone track is actually really good, but I feel like on the album, it kind of just blends in with everything else. And that's one thing that I kind of noticed about it, is that I felt like all the songs kind of just felt the same. And that's something that I just really don't like when I'm listening to an album. One more note I'll say is the intro track, Wake Up, I thought would be a good morning alarm song. It reminded me of Wake the Fuck Up by Korn. What's it called?
Yeah, that's just called Wake Up.
Wake Up, yeah.
Which that also would be a really good. Any song.
I actually had that as my alarm back in the day when it came out for a while. But yeah, this song it's called the Wake Up. It's 1 minute and 11 seconds long, so I don't know. It'd be fun morning alarm song.
I feel like most songs that are called Wake Up would be good to be an alarm. Like this,
especially
Korn,
if they're saying the words Wake Up in the song.
Suicide Silence would be a good one too.
Yeah.
That would be a good one. Your day just explodes.
All right, what's the next album?
Well, let's talk about the self-titled album from Make Them Suffer. This is a band that I've heard the name before, but we never checked out on the channel.
Yeah.
At least not to my recollection. And I think we even had a few requests asking us to check them out. So we did. And the intro track is awesome. I feel like a track like this is how you properly hype up an album. Because I'm hearing this like, yeah, let's go, this is gonna be cool. I just kind of wish that Weaponized, which is the track afterwards, kicked in a bit sooner. Because it felt like you had this amazing like intro track into a song that had a little bit of a long intro. I'm like, no, the intro track is the intro to the song.
That did the job already.
Exactly. So Weaponized should have just started with the explosion, basically.
Yeah.
Just hit right at the start of that track. You don't need to build anything up because you just built it up for a minute beforehand. But either way, I still think it was still a sick intro, and that was a pretty cool song. It was interesting to hear, like, from perspective, like I listened to the Browning first and then I went to this. To hear some of the electronic and synth stuff in the background of this, I'm like, wow, okay, yeah. I'm already kind of warmed up to that from the Browning being so heavy with it.
It was interesting that they had that in there too, and that 2 albums came out today that had that electronic stuff infused in the metal.
It just lines up like that, coincidentally. I feel like this album kind of had a little bit of everything. Like, I feel like
symphonic.
It's got the complete package for like modern metal. You know? Yeah. I feel like today you ask, like, you know, you find someone who's like a newer metalhead, you know, I just want to kind of just get into stuff where there's some like regular kind of stuff I could just latch onto, and they're not really like super duper into a genre.
Yeah.
I would give them this album because I feel like it kind of covers a lot of the bases, and I feel like they would enjoy it. Like, I feel like newer metalheads might like an album like this.
Yeah.
And I feel like it kind of covers a lot of bases, so I feel like most metalheads in general will probably find something in here that they like. But I do feel that the issue is that a lot of the songs do a similar thing. When I was listening to this album partway through, I would actually get moments of like, I feel like I heard this song already, but it wasn't a bad song. It kind of feels a little repetitive, but it was a good song repeating. You know what I mean?
I got you.
So I'm like, okay, you know, I'm liking this. It's generally good, like it's cool. And there are some songs that did stand out a little bit, but overall, I feel like you could put on any song from this record and you've basically heard them all.
Yeah.
Similar experience, similar syncopations, similar kind of melodic concepts in the form, breakdowns. Sometimes you get the female vocal, some synth here and there. So they kind of just mesh together a little bit. But you know, a song like Epitaph, I liked the hook from that one. So that's like an example of one that was like, okay, yeah, that one stood out a little bit. Or Venusian Blues, or Ghost of Me, like those two kind of stood out a little bit. Got me thinking like, yeah, this one's pretty cool. But overall, it kind of felt like a pretty standard sounding record with some cool stuff in it. And I feel like a lot of people could probably enjoy it, but it didn't really feel like anything overly exceptional. It kind of felt like a similar thing going throughout.
Yeah, standard album with cool stuff in it, I think is a really good way to put it. I can agree with that. My brain played a trick on me because the whole time I was, you know, I knew we were going to check this album out today, and my brain was telling me that it was Left to Suffer.
Oh.
And I know there's 2 different bands, but for some reason I thought they were closer in sound and closer in genre, so I put this on expecting something a little bit different. This is a lot, it's got like symphonic elements, like TV Fish said, there's kind of like a genre blend going on, but it's not like it's not like thrashy. It's not that kind of stuff. It's still on the deathcore side. It's got the electronic stuff. There's some interesting things going on. It's really hard to pinpoint exactly what you're hearing.
And for how popular deathcore and metalcore is today, it makes sense for this to sound, as I mentioned, like modern metal. I feel like that is kind of what a lot of bands are sounding like these days, and a lot of what's popular lends itself to those genres.
Exactly. So yeah, I was listening to it. I was having a good time with it. I didn't think it was bad by any means. There was a few songs that stood out. Man of God, which is track number 5. I really like the energy and the aggression on that one. And Ghost of Me, which you mentioned, track number 9, just great vibes in this song. They stand out for no other reason than just, this is just good. I'm just digging this.
Yeah.
Right? The second last song, Tether, I'm just gonna mention this because I thought it was weird. It had a weird like click track thing playing at the end of the song. I don't know what it was.
I'd have to hear it again. Did they leave the click in?
They didn't leave the click in.
Oh, okay.
But it sounded like a click track, but it wasn't. It's hard to explain, but it's weird.
Just another electronic bleep and bloop?
Kinda, but yeah, it sounded like a click track left. But it wasn't. I know it wasn't. But when you hear it again, you'll see what I'm talking about. But yeah, it's a fine album. I'll definitely listen to it again with fresh ears at one point when I'm not being so critical and analytical about it to see how I feel. But I'm kind of in the same boat as I was with the Browning album Omni, where it's fun, it's cool, but I kind of feel like I got to be really in the mood for something like this in order to really enjoy it. So.
Fair enough. So Klone dropped the album called The Unseen. They dropped an album last year, like 2 in 2 years. Last year they dropped an album called Meanwhile, which was pretty good. We checked it out in our first impressions of when it came out, which was earlier last year.
Did we?
We did.
I don't remember that. I thought this was my first time listening to Klone today.
Well, you know what? It's always cool when you
we listen to so many bands, it's hard to keep track, man. Look at all these bands here.
Yeah, so many. Anyways. And I probably mentioned this the last time, but I guess if you don't remember, if Men in Black just showed up, bam, then I found these guys from a random Twitter recommendation. Like someone tagged me and said, "Hey, check out this band called Klone. They sound like a mix of Gojira and something else I don't remember." And they told me about this album called Black Days, which came out in 2010, which I liked. It was good. It has this really nice cover of Army of Me by Bjork. It's a really cool cover. And I don't remember too much from Meanwhile, but from this album, it was like, my first kind of impression of it from hearing the first track was like, wow, like interlaced. This is very jammy. Like I really like the atmosphere. And then it ends with a sax solo. Like, whoa!
Was it sax? I knew it was some brass. It
sounded like a sax, and then you kind of had singing again, and then the sax to end the track.
Yeah.
Super duper cool. And the title track, the chorus in the title track had a really cool harmonic progression that kind of made you think it's going somewhere. Like it's almost kind of making a cadence happen, and then it doesn't happen, it does something else. So that kind of pivot that they do is really cool, because obviously when you hear a cadence in music, it kind of, your brain fills in the blanks. So when they don't do that, or where they do some secondary dominators, the wacky stuff, it keeps like surprising you, like, whoa, we're not going there, that's cool. And then this mini riff they have in the bridge that's kind of harder. Love that, that's juicy. And I was, at the time as I was listening, I'm like, I hope they just did that more, but then they bring it back and they end the track with that, and I thought that was super duper cool. So I was finding that this album was a really good example of how to maintain a consistent tone, but still make it fresh and not repetitive. It kind of felt like, wow, this is creating a really big soundscape and atmosphere that's really, really cool, comfortable. There's a bit of kind of bite to it, but not, and they did a lot of really cool stuff, and I thought it was a very, very pretty album. And it's the kind of album where it's like, everyone will have an album where like, it's that I need to go to that place kind of album. Like a really chill album. A really good example is, one of the albums for me like that is Damnation by Opeth. That's a really, really nice album. Like I just need to go there, right? I feel like this album is one of those kinds of albums where I need to go into that space that this album creates. The main kind of issue I found is with the last track, Spring. It's a 12-minute track. It basically, the song ends halfway through, and then the other half is just kind of just
nothing.
Ambient sound, which I feel like the way that they set up the atmosphere with the rest of the album, I was kind of looking forward to this last track being kind of a bit of a more epic journey through that whole soundscape, and it kind of just felt like an average track that ended and then they just tacked on some other thing. It's like, this isn't really much of a 12-minute song as it is a 6-minute song with 6 minutes of just aftertaste.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I still think it's a really nice album. Like I really like the atmosphere they made with this one.
Yeah, this is actually a really nice album. It's got a very smooth overall sound, very calming. It's like lounge music. It's got that jazzy kind of vibe to it. It's borderline elevator music at certain points, and that's not an insult, because there's some fancy elevator music out there. And I was kind of listening to it going, you know what, I can picture this in an elevator of a fancy hotel or something. Like,
imagine like someone like takes a hold of the intercom or something at that elevator. They just start playing Slayer as you're going in the elevator.
I mean, I would prefer that, but yeah. So I mean, this to me, it sounded kind of like a cross between like Porcupine Tree and Tool. Like,
oh yeah, I could see that.
That's kind of the vibe I was getting from it.
I like that, yeah.
And for me, I feel like it was very, very consistent in his sound, almost to a fault. And there was stuff happening in the songs, but like the ripples were small. And I guess the easiest way to say that is there just wasn't a lot of contour as far as the peaks and valleys would go in terms of its music. It kind of just rode this kind of calm, very smooth, very easy listening kind of vibe, but it did that very well. Now, if I'm ever in the mood to listen to something, I keep talking about mood. Today's an album about moods. I need to be in the mood for something like this. We're 3 for 3. Yeah, but there's definitely times where this is what I want. Something that's just calm, mellow, just soothing, right? Soothing. For me, aggressive music is soothing too, but it's in a different way, right? It does something different to my brain. So there's a place for this, there's an audience for this, but I don't think this album's for many people. I think there's a lot of people that might listen to this and think it's too soft, or it's too boring, or stuff like that, right? But for people that can appreciate that side of the metal genre, I think this is a fantastic album, and I think there's stuff there that people will really get behind and enjoy.
Well, continuing our discussion on moods, let's get a little aggressive and talk about Down the Heavens by Disparaged. Now, I basically just recently found out about this band because you showed me a cover they did of Monsters of Rock by Judas Priest, which was a cool cover. And then you're like, yeah, they're dropping an album. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And listen to it and, wow. Okay, this album is crazy. I feel like crazy, just based on my first impression, is the best way to describe this album right now. One of the first things I noticed is that this drummer really likes to throw a lot of small stuff in there as he's playing. Lots of stuff like that. Mainly lots of rolls on his ride and bells and stuff like that. Noticed that a lot. And then I also kind of felt like they were setting up riffs where you think it's gonna go one way and then they hit some kind of shot with it. And then it's like, oh, I wasn't expecting them to like hit a shot there. That's the riff? Oh, okay, I wasn't expecting that. So there were multiple songs that had multiple really cool and standout moments. And I found with this album, they were throwing so many curveballs. Like, oh, there's this now. Oh, they added this now. Oh, there's an interlude. Oh, there's this crazy instrumental. Like,
just circumventing expectations, yeah.
So like, you look at Servants of Fire. Okay, I wasn't expecting this melodic intro, and then bam, the band comes in with an explosion.
It almost feels like it's gonna be a ballad, that song.
Yeah.
And then I was like, here you go.
Just,
yeah.
Another Day. That has a few clean vocals in it. Wasn't expecting that. The instrumental, the title track, I wasn't expecting that. It's crazy. I was kind of thinking to myself, like, it was reminding me of The Deceivers by Doth, an album that we checked out earlier this year, which got quite favorable scores. And this was just reminding me a lot of that. The curveball, the craziness, the energy, the ability from everyone in the band is just like, whoa. Super duper crazy. One of the, I guess if I'm gonna say any criticisms from this first impression, I feel like this drummer is fantastic. I wish he let some of the songs breathe a little bit more. Like, you can take your feet off the pedals a little bit, just a bit, and maybe just do a slow riff for a song. And there were a few songs that did do that though. So I'm glad it was there. Wish it was there a little bit more, just to give yourself a little bit of a break from constantly having to put in either songs which the riff foundation is the double kick, or just kind of throwing it in there when you don't need to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, do it a little bit less, but still sounds great. I guess the only other real issue is that it kind of feels like this album's a bit longer than it needs to be. It's an hour and 6 minutes. And, you know, as I was listening to it, I was thinking of it like this. Imagine you just had an amazing dinner. This is some of the best food you've ever had. Like, oh my God, that's delicious, so well made. And you're full, but there's still more food on the plate, and you're like, well, that food's amazing, but like, I'm full, I'm satisfied, I've had enough.
That doesn't happen to me. My plate's clean at dinner time. Sorry. Anyways,
that's
I
what
get,
it,
I
that's
get
what
the
it felt.
analogy.
That's what it felt like.
I get the analogy. Yeah, this band, they kind of just appeared out of nowhere for me. They popped up in my Spotify recommended. I checked out their last album, which was called For Those Enslaved from 2020. It had that Judas Priest cover on. I thought, wow, these guys are pretty good. Looked it up. Hey, they're dropping an album soon. So we put it on our radar, and here we are. Yeah, I was quite impressed too. I started listening to it. I'm like, wow, there's a lot of nice stuff going here. The drums are great. There's great fills and stuff like that. Track 11 starts just a wicked drum fill. It just goes into a gnarly groove. Just on the ride, just excellent stuff. Grooves, there's lots of cool grooves on this album. Track number 2, The Throne, has this really cool groove. And a guitar solo follows, but it had a bit of an Arabic type of twang to it. It kind of reminded me of something you might hear from Nile, but like a lot more reserved on the aggression, like not as fast and crazy and technical as Nile, but it had that like Egyptian kind of Arabic kind of ambience to it. I thought that was really cool. You mentioned this track number 4, Another Day. It actually features Andy LaRocque from Merciful Fate / King Diamond, which is also pretty cool to have a feature like that. And the following song, Down the Heavens, has Demir Essek from Destruction on it, which that's the instrumental song. So there's a couple cool guitar features on this album too. Guitar-wise, I was getting a lot of remnants from like Scandinavian melodic death metal bands like In Flames and Arch Enemy and Dark Tranquillity and that kind of stuff.
I mean, I'm pretty sure these guys are Swiss, aren't they?
They're Swiss, yeah, they are.
That makes sense.
They're from Switzerland, so yeah, same ballpark, same area.
Yeah.
And the thing that I find surprising about this is this band released their first LP in 2003. They got together in 1999, released first in 2003, and now we're over 20 years later, and they have less than 3,000 listeners on Spotify, according to what Spotify said. And an album like this, that's this good on a first impression, to have that few listeners, I feel like this band is just totally being slept on, especially since they've been out for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a bit of a shame, and I don't know why exactly.
I think I did a bit of reading about it. Didn't they take a massive break?
Well, I mean, their last album was 2020.
But before that?
Maybe, I'm not sure. But I also think that this is an international band where they have members from different countries. They probably record independently and then submit their music for a mix and mastering. The challenge with that is it's very hard to tour like that. And a lot of bands pick up fans by touring.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things. So if you have a band like this that, all the members live in different places, it's really hard to really gain a popularity and gain a standing when you have a band like that. But it doesn't mean you can't still listen to the music. And I think people should be listening to it because Down the Heavens is, at least on a first impression, a really fun and really entertaining album, despite the fact that, yes, it's over an hour long and it's 14 tracks. But that just means there's a lot of content there.
Yeah, and we will be exploring that content all week. This is the album we're going to review. We're going to listen to it over and over and review it next week. Down the Heavens by Disparaged is our pick. And that's all we got for you guys today. Remember to like the video if you liked it and tell us in the comments below what is your favorite album that released today, and are there any that we didn't cover that you guys are listening to? Let us know. We'd love to hear what you guys have to say, and subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. I'm TV Fish.
I'm Bell Self.
And keep the horns up.